Hi everyone, Bruce here at eTrailer. Today we're going to take a look at and install the CURT Ezr Underbed Gooseneck Hitch on our 2024 Chevy Silverado 2500. This does have a 2 5/16 inch ball, and the gross trailer weight rating is 30,000 pounds with a 7,500 pound tongue weight, which is your downforce on the ball when you do have your gooseneck hooked up. Now we do have some 5/8 inch zinc coated safety chain loops here. You got one on each side, and they're spring loaded, so you can load your bed up if you're not hauling your gooseneck trailer, and they won't get in the way. One of the great things about this is you can go ahead and store the ball upside down when it's not in use. You simply take the ball out, flip it over, and it does have a nice handle you can hang on to, and you can go ahead and set it back in. Now that enables you to go ahead and stack stuff on top of here without this being in the way. Now you can also completely remove the ball, and you can store that away in your cab, and it comes with a nice cap to keep everything, any mud, dirt, and debris out of the hole. Now, taking a closer look at the ball, it does have a little channel here, and you notice it does have two holes because you have two locking pins that actually go in here and lock the ball, and it keeps it from turning or pulling it out. Now, putting the ball in, it doesn't matter what rotation you have this in. You could set it in here, and you notice it's not seated all the way down. All you got to do is just keep turning it until it does seat down, like that. And hence, that's the grooves on the side. So the grooves on the side really need to point towards the driver's side of the bed. But like I said, if you do put it in a different way, just keep rotating it until it gets to those slots, and it will drop down. Now, when you do put the ball in, and it does go down flush, as you see here, you can't forget to lock the mechanism. You do have to lock it by hand, and that's on the outside of the vehicle. Taking a closer look of the locking lever I spoke of when we were up in the bed of the truck, here is our locking lever. We opted to go ahead and put it on the driver's side, and to unlock it, it's in the lock position now. To unlock it, you're going to pull on the lever, and you're going to turn it clockwise. And then now it is in its unlocked position. You're able to go ahead and remove the ball mount out of the socket, and to lock it back, you're just going to turn it and let it go. Now that we have locked it from down below, you can see the ball won't turn and the ball won't lift out. Now, the one thing you just got to remember when you do put the ball in here is just make sure that it is locked in place. I recommend that once you do lock it, come back up top before you hook up your gooseneck and go ahead and give it a tug and just make sure it is nice and secure. There is an adapter plate that is sold separately that allows you to go ahead and tow a fifth wheel. If you want to do both, I highly recommend you get that adapter plate. Now, as far as the installation goes, it is a nice installation because it is under the bed. You don't have any rails going across that block anything, and you don't have to constantly remove a hitch and put one in. All you got to do is turn the ball upside down or take it out and store it in your cab. But as far as the installation actually goes, the installation is, I would say, on the difficult side. So if you're not looking to do that at home, check out our dealer locator on etrailer.com. But if you do want to give it a shot, stick around, I'll show you how. First thing we need to do in our installation is go ahead and lower the spare tire and get it out of the way. You can use your tire change kit that comes with the vehicle, and we're going to go ahead and do this now. The next step, grab a 13 millimeter, and there's a bolt up here that's holding on a heat shield. That's a 13 millimeter, and then there's one that's probably about a foot away towards the front. You need to remove these two, and we're doing that from the fender well area. We just removed the rear one. Now we're moving on to the front one. We are under the vehicle here, and we've got two more bolts to get out, and this is the heat shield we're talking about that we are going to remove and then set it aside. You can store it away because we're not going to be reusing it. Again, it is a 13 millimeter. Moving to the front of the heat shield, just follow it, and there's another brace in here going from one side of the vehicle to the other. It's just bolted on top like it was on the back. Go ahead and remove that. Once you get that one out, we can go ahead and remove that heat shield. We have the bolts removed, so now we can go ahead and remove the heat shield. And watch it, because it's going to be kind of full of dirt and grime and sticking to that beam. Go ahead and pull this guy down. And set that aside. Go ahead and grab our crossbars. You've got 2 of them, and we're going to grab 8 of the 1/2-inch bolts here. What we're going to do is clean out these holes of any debris or any powder coating that's in there before we throw them underneath the vehicle and have an issue. So you can use a tap as well, but we're just going to go ahead and use the bolts and a 19 millimeter wrench, and we're just going to run each bolt down inside the 1/2-inch holes. Now we will have to go ahead and remove these, so just keep that in mind. All we're doing is cleaning out the holes so we don't have any issues when we get up underneath the vehicle. Go ahead and grab another one and just keep going on each 1/2-inch hole, and you'll need to do both bars. We do need to go ahead and lower down our exhaust to give us a little bit more room. And the spare tire heat shield, we are going to go ahead and remove that just to help us out a little bit lowering the exhaust. Now you will keep this, so set it aside, and we'll be reusing it, so don't toss it. And it's a 13 millimeter. Go ahead and get those removed. Go ahead and lower that down and set it aside. To lower our exhaust, just grab some soapy water and a pry bar. And these isolators, we're going to go ahead and soak them down with soapy water. You can use some type of other spray as well. And then grab our pry bar and go ahead and work those off. Now, you do need to put a strap on the exhaust so it doesn't fall down, and we do have that on the muffler up front, and you'll see that here in a minute. But go ahead and start prying these off, just like that, and just slide it up out of the way. And we've got a couple more we need to get to. We've got one here on the front side of the axle here. You got one here and one here. And here's our strap that we're using to go ahead and hold that. You don't want to lower it down too far because we've got a lot of sensors and everything plugged into the exhaust here we got to be careful of. Now we can go ahead and put our crossbars in, but I do want to mention, if you look at your crossbars and we have offset holes here, what that means is the hole is closer to one side than the other. As you see here, it's closer to this one. That needs to face down to the frame area, so it needs to face just like this, so the offset's pointing down. Now, before we actually put our crossbar in, I do want to mention something here. We just cut a little notch out here in order for our crossbar to go through, because they want us to lay the crossbar flat like this and slide it in and then turn it up. Well, in order to do that, you're probably going to have to remove some bed bolts. And this is just a much easier way. We can just take our crossbar, slide it in our little groove there, and push that all the way across to the other side. And then slide it over, and we can get our other one in the exact same way. This just eliminates having to remove any bed bolts or anything like that. It just does make it a little quicker. Now we can take our center section and make sure we've got our center locator pressed in here. This little plastic piece will go right in the hole. I did put some packing tape on here just to hold it in so it doesn't pop out. And notice that this piece, this hole here is off center as well. So this section here that this hole is closest to is the rear location. So if you noticed, I wrote rear on there, and obviously the other side's the front. So just make sure that that offset is facing towards the rear of the vehicle. Now we can go ahead and grab our center section. If you want, you could get an extra set of hands. It is kind of heavy, but I think it's doable with one person. So let's go ahead and get it in there. Kind of want to angle it a little bit up over the exhaust and then the fuel tank there. Grabbing our hardware, we've got a conical tooth washer. Make sure this faces towards the centerpiece here and not this way. That's got to face towards the actual hitch piece. And then your 1/2-inch bolts that we used to clean out those holes earlier, we're going to grab 4 of those and go ahead and just hand tighten these for now. Once you do have the 4 bolts in on the front cross member here, don't forget to put the ones in the back cross member. And it is a little difficult. We actually had to put a pry bar right here with our exhaust and pry up to get it up far enough to actually get the bolts in. So just keep that in mind. And now that we've got those in, we're going to move on to the brackets that go onto the side of the frame, and we'll get to that now. For the next step, we're going to need to go ahead and grab these pieces here. We've got our bracket. Now these are side specific. The way this is going to work, this dropped end right here will go towards the rear of the vehicle. So make sure you've got the correct one on the correct side. Then you're going to grab some of the bigger bolts, and you're going to want the longer bolts. See, there's two. These two are the same size bolt, but one's longer than the other. You're going to want the longer bolts, and you're going to want the bigger washers. So you're going to use 2 of the washers, 2 of these bolts. You're going to grab a U-bolt with its nuts, and then you're going to grab a carriage bolt, nut, and a spacer, plus your fish wire. Now grabbing our bracket, we are on the passenger side. You're going to end up doing the same thing on the driver's side as we're doing here. So this hole right here needs to line up with this oblong hole in our frame. As you see, if I put that bracket on right now, I'm not lined up. So what I'm going to do is take a pry bar and I'm going to pry that whole piece from here, and we're just going to give it a oomph to get that hole to line up. I put my bracket back on, and I still got to go a little more. So we'll go ahead and go a little bit further. And try it again. That's pretty close. I'm probably going to go just a touch further, just to make sure we've got plenty of room there. And there we go, we're lined up. So now what we need to do is go ahead and take the bracket down, set it aside for the moment, grab our carriage bolt, fish wire, and our spacer. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to take our carriage bolt into our spacer, like so. And then we're going to take the fish wire and we're going to screw it onto our bolt. Just like that. And now we're going to take our carriage bolt and drop it in that hole. You might have to finagle it a little bit.
Now you notice I was struggling trying to get that carriage bolt inside this hole. So I'm going to take a deburring tool and we're going to make that opening just a little bit bigger so we can get that carriage bolt in there. I'm being a little shy with it earlier, but I think we might actually have it. There we go. Go ahead and drop that bolt in there along with our spacer block, and then you're going to end up pulling that back out like so. We can grab our plate. Take our fish wire and go through the hole. Now we're able to go ahead and pull that bolt through with our fish wire. Once we have it through, you can go ahead and remove the fish wire. And all I'm doing is just pulling on the fish wire. Now hold the bolt while you do this because you don't want it to drop back in the frame. Grab our nut and go ahead and put our nut on. And we're just going to hand tighten it for now. Now grab the longer bolts with our big washers on them, and those are going to go up here. Hold that up and go ahead and thread these in. And just go ahead and hand tighten those. We're going to come back and screw them in further. So we do have to put a U-bolt through here, so we need to get this one in a little bit further before we can get the U-bolt through the holes. Now we're going to take our U-bolt and it's going to go on the back side of the frame. Now just be sure you're not pinching any brake lines or any wiring or anything like that. I've already checked the other side, so we are good. Just send that through these two holes and grab the nuts. And just go ahead and leave these loose for now. I'm going to go ahead and grab our bracket here and the shorter bolts with the smaller washers. And this bracket's going to go right in between our cross members. And just watch that little sensor there. Go ahead and push that up. Now, if you don't, you don't have enough room to get this bracket in, you need to loosen up your bolts so the cross members spread apart so you can get that brace in there. And we're just going to get those hand tight. Now that we do have all of our pieces in place, we can go ahead and snug these down. I'm going to start with this bracket here. And just remember, whatever we do here, you're going to do the same thing to the driver's side. Now I'm going to go ahead and do these two here. What I'm going to do here is just loosen this U-bolt up a little bit so I can push it back out of the way so I can get to that other bolt. And we're going to try and run the U-bolts down evenly so you get even pressure on both sides. Go a few turns. Now we can go ahead and snug our carriage bolt down here. And just remember what we did here, you're going to have to do on the driver's side. A couple of things I do want to note before you actually start snugging things up is make sure you are centered in your bed here, which we are. We're about 17.5 inches from each frame rail to the center. And also on the driver's side, we did have to remove the brake line bracket here. You see our U-bolt right here. We had to get our U-bolt back behind our brake lines. So just keep that in mind when you're doing the driver's side, that you're probably gonna have to take this down. Now we're gonna grab our torque wrench and go ahead and torque all of our bolts down to the manufacturer's specifications. Now, if you don't have a torque wrench, you can rent one from your local auto parts store, or we do carry them here at eTrailer. We had tightened down the U-bolts earlier, but as you know, with this bolt right here, the U-bolt's gonna be in the way. So I recommend just leaving the U-bolt loose and then go ahead and torque these down, and then tighten your U-bolts back up and torque them down. Once you do have these side plates torqued down, you need to go ahead and torque all of our bolts in the center section here. So it's all of them. You've got your big bolts and then your 1/2-inch bolts here inside and back here in all of these. Just make sure you get those torqued down. Once you do that, then we can go ahead and drill our pilot hole up here. And then we've got a couple of more holes we need to drill up, and then we can get on top of inside the bed and go ahead and drill them down. Now we need to take a 3/16" drill bit, and that plastic piece we put on top of this centerpiece here, we're gonna drill through up into the bed. There's a little pilot hole there in that plastic piece. We're just gonna go ahead and drill straight up. Just like that. Once you have the center pilot hole drilled up, we do have 2 holes here, one here, and you're gonna have that same thing on the other side of this plate. We're just gonna drill a pilot hole up here and in this one so we can see where we need to drill down up top. And again, I'm just using a 3/16" bit and try and get this centered as much as possible. We have the pilot holes drilled up, and the first hole we're going to drill down is going to be our 4-inch hole for our gooseneck ball itself. Remember, we had that orange piece that went on top of that plate. Once you start seeing orange plastic coming up when we're cutting, that's when we know we're good enough and we can pull those pieces out. So let's go ahead and get started. This is a 4-inch hole saw. Now we're going to take our bit here that's attached to our hole saw, and we're just going to go ahead and put it in our pilot hole that we drilled up. And go ahead and start drilling. Now take your time with this. Now we can go ahead and take the center locator out. And we got a nice hole. So now we've got to take a 5/8 hole saw is what the instructions say, but we're going to use a step bit for our safety chain loops here that we got to do. We've got 2 holes here and 2 holes on the other side. So let's go ahead and use our step bit, and I grabbed the U-bolt just because I can test fit it as I'm drilling the holes, so I'm not going too big with the holes, but just big enough to where these are going to slide up and down. So what I did while I was drilling the holes, I just took the U-bolt and just got the hole just enough so the U-bolts do move up and down freely, but you don't want them so big here that it's so noticeable. So I think we're good there. I just use a step bit is what I recommend, and just keep going until you get it just like that. Now we're going to go ahead and take some paint, and we are going to, where we've got these silver areas, we just want to protect those from any rust or corrosion. Just give them a little squirt inside there, inside here. Once we do this, we can go
we're going to be going back down below. We're going to take both our hooks here. We're going to set them in. We're going to give a minute for this to dry. We'll put these down, and then we'll be going back underneath the truck. Now this is how our U-bolts for our safety chains are going to go. You're going to have a washer, a spring, washer, then a nut. And we've got this side done. We'll go over to the other side and go ahead and get that one done. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and put a washer on, then our spring. Push the spring up, get our other washer on, and then get our nut on. The same way on this one. Taking a 15/16, we're going to go ahead and tighten these bolts. Now we're not going to tighten these all the way down. We're just going to tighten them so they're even with the bottom of the U-bolt. That should be good there. We've got the nylock nut part is engaged, so we should be good on that one. I'll give it just a little bit more and do the same on this one. Once you've got the nuts tightened down where they need to be, what I like to do is go ahead and push up on these and make sure they do come fully down. And if it does hang up like this or something or that, you just need to make the holes a little bit bigger on the top side. Before we actually do this next step, I just want to line this out how this next step is actually going to go, because it's got quite a few pieces and it's a very tight spot where they got to go, and it may be very hard to see up in there. So basically we've got our rod, we're going to have a flat washer, spring, and our lock pin. So the way this is going to work is you're going to end up putting the flat washer on our rod along with the spring. Now just remember, this is how it's going to go into the unit, but I just want to show these pieces here because it's very difficult to see under there. And then we're going to do our spring, and then our rod is going to go into our lock pin like so. And then you'll have the bolt that actually holds the lock pin onto the rod. Will go in just like that. And that will create our lock. When you pull on the rod, it will unlock it. And then when you turn the rod the other way, it will unlock and go ahead and lock freely with using the spring force. So let's go ahead and show you where the rod actually goes and get all these pieces put together. So now we're under the vehicle here. We're going to take the lock pin that we showed you earlier and go ahead and insert it from the driver's side. You can do this and insert it from the passenger side if you want your rod on the passenger side, but we opted to go on the driver's side here. And you're just going to take your lock pin and go ahead and put it in our center hole all the way across. And then we will go get the rod and show you where that goes. Okay, we are on the driver's side, and this big hole right here is where our rod's gonna go. And you're not gonna really be able to see it on camera, but if you look through this hole, you're gonna see the hole that the rod needs to go through on our centerpiece. So we're just gonna take our rod and go ahead and slide it in here. We are now back underneath the vehicle, and you see where this rod is coming through our plate here. And then there is a tab located right here that rod does have to go through. So let's get that through there real quick. Now what we need to do is go ahead and push that rod all the way in and get it through that tab. Like that. So we're going to go ahead and take our washer now and put it on our rod. Like so, and then we're going to grab our spring and put that on a rod as well. Now we're going to go ahead and take the rod and push it into our lock pin, like so. Now we're going to go ahead and take our little bolt and we're going to put it through. It might be a little difficult to line that up, but
You're just gonna have to move that rod back and forth like that. And then we've got the nut we got to put on the back side of it. And then we'll go ahead and tighten it down. The way the rod and lock pin mechanism work is when you pull the rod out, you turn it, and that's gonna lock it open. And then to relock it, you pull it out and just release it, and it will lock back in place. Now we can go ahead and tighten our little bolt down to our lock pin. Now, you don't need to go super tight with this. It's basically just holding the rod in.
Grab the chrome ring with its 3 screws, and we're going to go ahead and screw that down to the top of the hitch. And go ahead and run those screws down. And don't over tighten these screws because you don't want to snap the heads of them off. No ugga-duggas here, just hand tight. Now we can go ahead and grab our ball. Now there is only one direction that this ball will actually go in, but it doesn't really matter. You can just set it in here. Just keep turning the ball till it does seat down, like that. And then don't forget to lock your latch on the outside, which will lock the ball into place and it won't come out. That does complete our installation of our CURT Ezr Underbed Gooseneck Hitch on our 2024 Chevrolet Silverado 2500. I'm Bruce. Thanks for watching.